Welcome back. My name's Newman. This is My Life with Plants, and today I'm doing the watering in my house with my house plants, so I just want to show you around. So stay tuned. Okay, first up, I just gave this a water. It's my Rhipsalis. This is well, it would have helped if I checked the name before I get this down. This is probably one of the easiest to grow. One of the easiest. It has nice long cylindrical stems with spines, but they're very, very hairy and soft to the touch, so they won't stab you or come off or embed in your skin. You can actually touch this. It's a native of Brazil, I'm pretty certain. And it does love water, so as you can see there, it's actually still growing in peat moss, believe it or not, and being an epiphyte. They clearly enjoy that, and they love cool conditions. So if you've got somewhere where it has bright light, but nothing direct, then this will be ideal for that position. And as you can see here, I have mine inside a glass, just to keep some humidity in there. Although from time to time the stems get a little bit trapped in there, and I have to hook them out so that they can make their way up and over the rim of the glass. It does have little tiny white flowers when it does, and little white berries. This one's been doing really well. It's even got some moss growing in there. You can get right inside there. You can actually see it's quite moist. And there are mosses growing in there, which is fine. And then up here, I hang it right there. You can see that it's got some shade cloth on the window there, so it doesn't get too much. Okay, next up is a Bulbophyllum. Up here in this nice sunny window, but it does need protection from direct sun, is a Bulbophyllum. I don't have a lot of Bulbophyllums, but I do have this one. And its name is frostii. And I bought this as 3 bulbs, pseudo bulbs there, and it has grown out to make 2 more. And actually you can see something that's protruding from one of those bulbs. It could be either a flower spike or it might be a new bulb, but I'm not sure. The latest 2 bulbs have a little bit more growing to do. It does seem to grow and to stop growing throughout the year. I think it loves these cooler conditions with plenty of bright light, and that's what triggers a lot of growth in it. However, it doesn't grow a lot during midsummer. So you can see there that there are actually some mosses growing. And you're supposed to keep this quite moist. Being a Bulbophyllum, at times it does dry out quite a bit. It doesn't hurt the plant. I just wouldn't recommend too hot for this. If you live in a very hot climate, this might be a little bit more difficult. You might have to find a shadier position. And it hangs up here, so we'll put it back right there. Up on the side here, you can actually see another epiphyllum. Sorry, Rhipsalis. And I'm going to have to put the name on the screen because I can't remember it offhand. But we'll unhook it and take it down. It's another interesting kind of Rhipsalis here. Sorry, I'm just looking at the leaves. I do see little tiny specks on it that could be spider mite. Although I'm not worried because I do have predatory mites that march around here. So I might move this closer to the tillandsias where I did spot predatory mites. Yeah. Things get attacked. Can't be helped from time to time. This is a Rhipsalis, native to Brazil. I'll put its name on the screen. It is still growing in the cocoa peat. You can see right in there. Even there's a little fern trying to grow. We can get in there. Hang on. If I come around this side, there we go. You can just catch a glimpse. It's amazing how you just I can't find it. Okay, there it is. You can see a little fern popping out of there because it's kept quite moist actually. So yeah, we got little tiny dots on it that I can see that look like spider mites. It's starting to branch. As you can see there, you can see some new branches coming away. Ta-da! So we're going to have to deal with that. Hang it back up on here. Right. Okay, I gave this Rhipsalis a watering with the under the tap with the rose head. I think I washed away quite a few and I put a sticky trap in there. That's all I can do. Hopefully we'll get some predatory mites on it that actually live over that side. Okay, this one is my Peperomia Hope. I bought this years and years ago. And I actually gave the main plant to a friend and I kept a cutting. And this cutting has become this big, long thing. And it's actually snapped off in a couple of places. It actually got too heavy to support itself. I had branches that were so long that they actually broke off, and I've propagated them. They're very, very easy to grow too. They're just very easy. One of the hardiest of the Peperomia. This one happens to be a hybrid. And it grows very, very easy, as I said before. Actually, when I water it, I make sure I drain out the cash pot and leave no water behind. And once it's dry, I give it another water. It doesn't seem to like having water at all in the reservoir, because I've noticed that it'll have leaves on the bottom stems that go mushy and I've actually repeated that quite a few times where I've actually left water in there and it's done it again and again. So I just don't do it anymore, and it seems to be in better health. So just got to pop this one up here so I can continue watering other plants because it'll be in the way. Okay, up. Doing this with one hand so I can look awkward on camera. It's just going to hang up on there while I give the next one a water. Okay, next up we have this Cryptanthus. And surprisingly it's done really well in the window here. And it can get down to about 10 or 12 degrees Celsius, and as you can see there's no damage whatsoever on the leaves, which surprised me. Usually this plant is a native of Brazil, growing on the dry forest floors, much drier areas. Likes a good watering, likes to dry out in between waterings. It's not really a succulent, it is just a terrestrial bromeliad. It does have quite thick fleshy leaves. It's got those nice undulated edges to the leaves there with a little bit of serration, but it doesn't hurt. Kind of just catches a little bit on your finger. It'll have lovely flowers that will come up from the apex of the plant, right in the center there. Yeah, I like the variegation on it, and it's best grown in actually a shallow round pot, so I can colonize inside that. But I got it hanging up here. I just thought I would have it hanging. And I'm going to put that one back now. Oh yeah, I forgot to say, thanks for watching today. Makes me happy that you're here sharing the hobby with me. Alright, next up is this, I was going to say a Rhipsalis every time I look at it, but it's actually a Hoya. Hoya, put the name on the screen there. It's just evaded me for a second. I actually had the name in my head and I've lost it again. But it does have that red, you can see a new growth coming up there. Kind of stopped, and now and then it drops a leaf or two. I'm not quite sure about what it really wants for growth. Not giving it too much sunshine. Actually kept it away from the sun. It just gets bright light or a little bit of soft sunshine. What's really neat about it is it has these compressed flat leaves with a little like nodules on the end of it that you can see there. They kind of remind me of spider feet. They kind of look like that, a spider's foot. And yeah, a lot of growers recommend that you just keep it in a cache pot, which is what I've got it in, and just have a little bit of water in there. Likes moisture. It's growing in quite a chunky mix actually. It's bark and pumice, but if it doesn't grow from this spring, if there's no action going on, I might move it to Akadama. It might actually want a different kind of soil, and that does happen from time to time. So usually this one hangs right on my Phalaenopsis pot here, but because I got to water the Phalaenopsis, I'm going to move it up here for now. Hang it. Okay, so I'll be back in a minute to show you my Phalaenopsis. Okay, watering all done on this Phalaenopsis. There's this nice big flower spike. I featured it on my other video about Phalaenopsis care. But what's really amazing about this one is I've had it for 6 or 7 years now. And it's put out these big giant leaves. So this is not just anything that I've received recently. I've actually had this for many years, and still in the same pot. I have my ups and downs with this. I learned a lot about Phalaenopsis, but it's doing really good. And as always, it will slowly mature the spike, and it'll have the jumbo-sized Phalaenopsis flowers, and they will be white with a pink center. Not fragrant, but just looking at them is quite magnificent. Alright, next up, I don't think I've ever shown this one yet. It's Hoya deykeae. I had to spit that out before I forgot it, even though I have a tag in there. You can see it right there. It's just the pronunciation I'm not sure if I could make a mistake with that. Wasn't sure if it was deykeae, deykeae, or deykeae, or deykeae. This one has big leaves. I could be wrong about the name. I'm pretty sure it's deykeae. It has put out these long tendrils, you can see here, and they are continuing to grow, except for that one's a little aborted a little bit, and we got one there. But it is the winter, And I do keep this thin cotton material over it. I don't get too much sunshine on it, because I don't think it would like that. It's got some big nice veins and these really cupped leaves. So what is the benefit of this Hoya having such cupped leaves? It could be a way that it is trying to gather more sunlight by curving its leaves, because it might come in much more shady right under the canopy of large jungle trees and shrubs, and maybe it's evolved to cup its leaves. But it does come from an area that gets quite significant high rainfall, as I can remember. Leaves do come out a little funny now and then. Usually as they emerge, they'll be all crinkled up and they'll straighten themselves out. And there are actually some leaves like this one here that are actually quite thick. So it's quite a unusual Hoya. You can have really thick leaves to the touch. You can have thin leaves, cupped, wavy, undulated. So this is Hoya deykeae. Had this for close to a year now, and looking forward to it flowering. Hopefully this long, adventitious part here will actually have a flower for me, if I get lucky. Yes, I'm just going to go and hang it back in the window because it's getting a little heavy on my shoulder. Okay, so here you can see it. It's in this very, very bright window, and actually too much sunlight. So it does have this cotton fabric or cloth, which helps to make it shady, just like its natural habitat. Yeah, this leaf is pretty thick compared to these. That one's another thick one. So that's Hoya deykeae. Next up is Hoya callistophylla. But I just gave it a water. What's interesting about this one is its crocodile leaves. And I picked this one up with deykeae a year ago. Happened to run into it and I thought, okay, I'll give it a go. It's been going really well. It's sending out this new vine here. It's been growing some leaves, actually quite close to the bottom, surprisingly. Puts leaves out down here. And it's stable, hasn't dropped any leaves at all. When I do water it, I actually have a little left over in the bud for it to suck up. And then I just let it dry out somewhat, not too much. Just let it drink up the water that it has in the pod, but definitely, like deykeae, don't let it go bone dry. It'll lose its root system. And yeah, I love these leaves. They're really fantastic looking. And it hasn't flowered yet. I've only had it for a year. But once it does, it'll be a big surprise for me. And it has one more vine that's actually gone up. And this one hangs in the sunny window too. Very, very long cotton rope going all the way down, because the reason why I do that is that there are spaces all along my canopy here. I call it my canopy. And you can even see here that there's a space to have another plant in the future if I want one. Yeah, so that's callistophylla. Very nice growing Hoya. I recommend it. It's very common too, easy to find. You could probably find one right now. Next up is Hoya cultivar Ruthie. And the reason why I picked this one up is that it has a flower or a color that I really love. And the interesting thing about this is that it was, well, it's a cultivar, as it says there on the tag, and what that means is that during growing another species of Hoya. They actually found a variation, and they called it this one, Hoya CV Ruthie, because it has really large yellow orangey flowers, not in clusters but like one at a time, up to 2 or 3 on a peduncle, and they just have a spectacular orangey yellow. And it's been doing really well. You can see here the leaves are slightly pubescent and just a bright shiny green. Kind of reminds me of a reminds me of the leaves on the shrubs, the Japanese shrubs that are outside. What are they called? Camellias, that's right. They look like the leaves on a camellia. Yeah, it's been doing really well. You can see here it's starting to push out some new growth there, some new leaves, and it's just growing in a pumice and cocoa coir mix there, and I water it generously, and I keep water in the reservoir in case it wants to send some roots down into the reservoir to get a little bit more drink. It can do so. And it's hanging up here in my jungle, so I'm looking forward to it having flowers. And so far it's been really growing really well, and easy at ease of culture, easy to grow, and it must be because this room is unheated, as I've told you, and it gets down to about 10 degrees at night and up to about between 15 to 20 degrees during the winter. So this is Hoya cultivar Ruthie. So the question of the day is, do any of you viewers out there, my friends, do any of you leave plants lying around the house and you completely forgot that they were there? Maybe for instance this one hanging up in the window. I've moved it there to do the watering, and then you just completely forget about it, and then you discover it there when you get home. So if you do, leave me a comment there, because I'm kind of interested to know. Hopefully I'm not the only one that's absent-minded and leaves things lying around when I don't mean to. So here's one that I actually left in the living room, and I just completely forgot about it, and I just remembered somehow to bring this one back and hang it back up into its position. And this is Hoya Crimson Princess, and check out this new growth. Look at that during the winter time. And it has this beautiful, the first leaves that come out are so bright pink. Like, can you get even more pink than that? They can be really dark reddish pink, and then as they mature they can get to this color. What's interesting about this one is that every leaf has its own variegation on it, and what I've figured out after the years of trying to work out how to grow this thing is that it likes water. It's a big drinker, and so therefore I do keep water in its reservoir all the time, and it's growing in, this one's just growing in bark. That's about it. The growing medium is in everything. The Hoya just uses it like an epiphyte just to wrap its roots around, but the water is where it gets its nutrients from. So if you're keeping that up, everything should be good to go, and you don't necessarily have to repot unless you want this plant to get twice as big. So over here I can actually see, if I can focus right there. Let me try again. Wasn't 1, 2. Right there, it looks like that could be the beginning of a new stem, tendril, and also a peduncle. It does have a peduncle right here, by the way. Right there we can see a peduncle. Yeah, so I know that once this sets its peduncle, then I better keep it fertilized. This plant will show when it's not getting enough feed. It'll just drop all those peduncles. When you have active growth like this, you know that you're doing a good thing. You can see this new leaf here, this nice new leaf here, and that one there. So everything is good. And I just use slow release granular fertilizer. That's just 888. It's just 888 all purpose. And then I will refertilize it probably let's see, in a couple of months. I would have used it up, and I better refertilize it again, otherwise it'll drop its peduncles. Check out this nice big leaf up here. It's just a plain old green one, because it does revert back. And interesting enough, I did take a cutting off it because it had a piece that had reverted, so I just have the straight out carnosa without any variegation. But who knows, it could put out a variegated stem, but so far it hasn't, and it started to grow nicely there. You can't beat the plain old green Hoyas, because they're always going to be the healthiest. They can get far more photosynthesis going and be healthier. So if you're having trouble with your variegated ones, don't be ashamed to just go back and grow the plain old green one. Yeah, okay, so that is Hoya Crimson Princess hanging up in this sunny window, or back from it. Look at this nice long shoot up here, look at that. That I'm trying to support. Another thing is that you can actually move these tendrils and carefully tie them up, making sure you don't play around with the delicate part here, but actually pull the bottom part up, and it doesn't hurt it. It doesn't have a reaction to it. Some Hoyas do, however, but we'll get back to that pretty soon. Hey, hopefully you're still with me. And if you're not, you must be busy, but if you are, thanks for staying tuned, because next up is this magnificent thing, and this is Hoya Sunrise, which is a hybrid between two Hoyas that I can't remember the names of. Off the top of my head, I can't remember. And this is almost, well, this is probably my favorite Hoya of all time. I mean, look at those leaves. Look how red they get. And it doesn't take a lot of actual sunshine to make them that red. The newest leaves will come out green, and they will stay green like that if you have them in very low light levels. However, mine's hanging up in the sunny window, and these leaves get really, really red like that. And I just gave it a water, so I thoroughly soaked it with lukewarm tap water, and I drained it all out. That means I tipped the plant up to drain all the water out of the reservoir. Then I used the water that I treat with dechlorinizer, a little bit of liquid feed, and the occasional application of dolomite lime. And if that word scares you, then I suggest looking into it if it makes you more comfortable. But I don't have any pests at all, because I use that dolomite lime. Does tend to keep the plant much more healthier than the average plant, household plant, and that makes them, their epidermis and their tissue and everything stronger, which resists pest attack. And also it promotes a good healthy substrate that can keep those happy microbes growing and looking after your plant in return. But I suggest looking up dolomite lime anyway, so that you know how to use it. But here it is, hanging up in the sunny window. Isn't that magnificent? Still has its peduncles. Occasionally, old peduncles will fall off. It'll make new ones. But this thing, you can see here that it's actually got an older one here. There's one. And here's one here. Right there. There's a couple here. Don't panic if it drops one or two. They do get old and fall off. However, whatever you do, don't let your Hoya's roots grow out, dry out. It's not a cactus, okay? So these plants come from an environment that gets regular rainfall. And they can be dry, well, the seasonally dry places, but if you look online, or if you can find sources, you'll notice that where the Hoyas are growing, it's still moist there, and rain does still fall during the dry seasons, so they're still getting hydrated, but you should never let it go bone dry. That'll just kill the whole root system. So this particular one, it doesn't want to climb, it wants to trail. It's more of a trailing plant, so let it just hang and drape. So that's good for your overall aesthetic look of your collection. You have something that hangs and drapes down. And the flowers are magnificent, the perfume on them. They're actually delicious, the smell of them. So if you don't have a Hoya sunrise, then I recommend it. It's very easy to grow, easy, and even taking cuttings off it. I've taken even tiny little cuttings, just little pieces like this, and it roots up really easily. It's not fussy about its growing medium. It can be grown in bark, straight out bark, or bark and pumice, even sphagnum moss. Yes, so this is Hoya Sunrise. Okay, next up, hanging off my shoulder, is Hoya mathilde. And you can see here that my Hoya mathilde actually has new leaves coming on here. You can see them right there. And over here. And it has leaves that are yellowing and dropping off. They're pretty old. I've had them on the plant for, let's see, quite a few years now, at least 5 years or more. So that's fine. This one is quite heavy and my shoulder's aching because I've been carrying a lot of plants with my left arm. So I might swap it over. Okay, there we go. After holding plants and watering them for a while, shoulder's starting to hurt, ache a little bit. Okay, so you can see these tendrils coming off here. These are all new. I water this plant. It does have a cache pot. It's kind of moist and cool in the cache pot, but there's not a lot of water left over in there. Just a little, maybe a few centimeters, maybe 2 centimeters of water left over in there to keep the humidity around the roots, because it is in a very porous mix. And as you can see here, it's been paying off with all this new growth coming away. However, this is one of those Hoyas that rejects meddling or interference with the tendrils. So, if you tend to want to pull them up and tie them, you will probably have dieback on your tendrils. So you're better to have the, well, even my right arm, my right shoulder's no good. It's probably just age, right? I'm not no young spring chicken no more. Yeah, so I'm going to hang this thing up soon, actually, because it's pretty heavy with that terracotta pot. It doesn't like any meddling with its new tendrils, so if you tend to tie them up and the tips die, then it'll be caused by that. So you can try it yourself with the Hoya mathilde, and if the tips die, then you know it's because of that. So I recommend having somewhere for it to climb, like it's got this wreath here, but at the end of the day, just let it scramble and move around on its own, in its own way, and you should have a much healthier plant. Let me just hang it up here and I'll get back to you. It hangs up in the sunny window here, and it does have one of these cloths again, which is cotton, and I will drape it down for two reasons. One is when the night gets really cold, keeps it warm. I just drape it down around the leaves, and I also will use it in summer because it'll be just too much sun. It doesn't like that either. And it does have these peduncles that it has from last year. It did have a lot of growth, that old growth that I cut off. It was getting old, but it is an old plant, and it's been growing much better for me now that I make sure that I water it every week. Depending on your climate, you would do that differently. We have a lot of sun during the winter time, so I'm able to do that. And it's been putting out this growth that I won't touch, because if I do that, it'll die back again. And so it's going to be one of those plants that climbs a little bit and also dangles a little bit or trails down, which is fine. So make sure you give it some leeway, that's all I can say. And something really neat to show you is we have a new peduncle right here. New peduncle on this new growth that's come away here, so everything's going really well. Once again, there's no need to repot your Hoyas because you've got this. Every 2 years I have to repot. Just remember that it's all in the water that you provide for your Hoyas, and that the growing medium is just something for the roots to attach to. In nature, they wrap and attach themselves to trees, and they don't receive all that much nutrients from what they are attached to. If you think about, if they're attached to trees, there's nothing really much to gain from it, or there's no nutrients. It's all in the water that is provided by the rainfall, so just keep that in mind. But if you are looking for a much bigger specimen, then go ahead and repot them and they'll get bigger. But I just want to keep it a medium-sized plant, because if it gets too big, it'll just take over and I won't have space for all my other specimens that I grow here. Anyway, I hope that helps you out a little bit, and we're going to get on with the next plant. Next up is this big old Hoya Bella, and it has over time lost a lot of leaves along its long stems. And we will have a look at these leaves here that are a little sun stressed, as you can see here, because it gets a lot of light, and it's actually a little bit too much for it. It doesn't require that much light at all. In actual fact is that I want to move this particular Hoya to a different position. And another thing is that it drops a few leaves during the winter. When it gets down to 10 degrees, we'll have a few leaves that will fall off here and there. So this plant, I'm actually going to give it a good prune, and it's in a very small pot for such a large plant, so I will repot it this time because of that problem with the plant is kind of off balance there. Just put it in a slightly bigger pot that fits this cache pot. Going to give it some cuts here and there to promote it to have fresh, bushier growth that'll take care of these long stems. But this is natural. Even in nature, these plants will do this. Their stems will get a bald as they grow from lower branches. And I'll use those for cuttings and give them away to friends or people who want to grow them. And yeah, I've had this one for many years. It flowers really abundantly for me, and it's probably pressing its limit. So we get down to 10 degrees in this room, so this is pushing its limits, and it could do with a little less sunlight, okay, because it's not a direct sun loving plant at all. And there's a leaf there. You can see here that that is just stress from cold and sunlight. So we'll discard that later. Okay, next up, otherwise it's a healthy plant and it likes a lot of water. Next up is Nepenthes. This Nepenthes here has actually put out this new picture here, nice brand new one. No additional humidity is put into this room, but it is unheated, so it's not like it's drying out too much. It still retains this older picture here, and its name is Gaia, so it is a hybrid. You can see that is pushing out something that it actually looks like it's going to be an inflorescence. It's going to try to flower. However, when these plants become they naturally elongate because they're climbers. They naturally climb trees. They grow on the forest floor too in tropical Asia. And a lot of them grow as a lithophyte, which means they grow on limestone walls in the jungles. They can grow attached to trees too, and they tend to like to climb up just so they can get a little bit more extra light to flower. And at that time, when they start to grow and get taller, you can take cuttings off them and grow new picture Nepenthes. I recommend growing Nepenthes because they're really interesting. They also do trap a lot of pests, so if you have fungus gnats, believe me, this thing is going to catch hundreds of them, because I've had one in the garden and I bought that one inside just for the winter, but I will put it back out in the garden, and when I emptied the traps out before bringing it in for winter, it was full of little tiny insects. A lot of them were mosquitoes. The mosquitoes had gone inside them. So it's a good bug catcher. Does a really good job for that. And this one is nice and healthy. There's another nice picture coming out there. I recommend growing these as something that can make your house look nice and jungle looking. And they're very interesting, and there's no problem with culture whatsoever. When you buy them in the pot that they are potted in, the medium, there's no need to repot them at all. Just make sure that they keep moist, and this one is inside another plastic pot here so that the water doesn't go onto the floor, but I will water it until the water comes out the bottom. So I tend to use this squirty bottle here, and inside this I've actually put activated charcoal, which you can see on the bottom, and I put dechlorinizer because these plants will not like chlorine or chloramide. I don't like anything like that. And as you can see here, this plant is very healthy, no problems whatsoever, so the water has been working fine for it. It's even got some mosses growing in there, which is a good sign that everything is going well. Eventually this thing will need repotting, and at such time you must use, you can actually see mosses growing in there. Can you see them? That means that the medium is very healthy. So you can see that the water has actually come out the bottom there. You can see it trickling out the bottom. That means it's got enough water. It'll drink up that little bit of excess left over. It's got bubble wrap up here just to protect it from those lower temperatures. It's bright light. It's under the shade of Hoya belly here. So this one doesn't particularly like direct sun, and it likes bright filtered light. And yeah, I nearly lost my train of thought here. So when you have to repot it, you should use sphagnum moss or peat moss, because they don't contain any fertilizer or they lack nutrients. So they absolutely lack nutrients, which is what they grow in naturally whatever you do, do not put slow release fertilizer or anything into the pot. It will have an adverse effect on the Nepenthes. It gathers all its food from sunlight, photosynthesis, and plus little bugs falling in the trap. Whatever you do, don't catch big ginormous bugs that can barely fit inside it. We're talking about little tiny things, just tiny little flies. And if you want to feed yours, you could give one trap 2 little tiny flies, and I mean just tiny little tiny things like that every 3 months or something, and that will be adequate for it. And don't put pieces of meat or anything in there, okay? It'll just rot the traps. Okay, so down here we have this plant that's really interesting, and it's a coleus, I think. Geez, I can't remember what it is anymore. I'm good at that. And this has such a really interesting texture on the leaves. Look at that. It's like lots of little mountains on it. It must have something to do with its making it more effective to gather sunlight on the shady jungles that they grow in. It's got to be an adaptation. However, plants like this get very, very, very dusty. So how are you going to get all the dust off? Well, you can do 2 things. You can bring it to the shower and shower it all off. Or you can just get a cosmetic brush like this. They're very soft, and you should take it outside when you do this. This brush won't harm the leaves whatsoever, and you can get all that dust off. Same with this one here. This jewel orchid. You can actually see all that dust coming off. Look at that. As I dusted like this, these leaves are now clean. This is something that velvety textured leaves you don't want to get wet. They have evolved to like this to repel water. So when water falls on these leaves, the water rolls off, just like if you were to have a barrier cream on your skin, because this is their skin. Tropical plants do everything to repel water off their leaves, and they come up with all clever inventions with their evolution, because just like your skin, their skin on their leaves will be subject to fungus and bacterias. So this jewel orchid has this remarkable velvety hairs that are just so tiny you just can't see them with your eye. You'd have to use a microscope. And that's to repel water. And look at that. Ta-da! Look how clean it is. Maybe not this one so much, but this is just using this cosmetic brush that's from a dinosaur store. I just thought I'd show you that. Look at this dusty thing here too. That needs a good dust. So I'm going to get on with that. Anyway, that's all for today. We have to stop here because we're showing a lot of plants, and I hope you enjoyed watching, and I'll be back for more houseplant tours of probably these guys down here, because we haven't seen them, plus the living room. So there's some plants that are really doing well in there, and if you want to see these plants up close, get a little bit of knowledge from them and a few tips, and maybe you'll be fascinated by them and want to grow them yourself, then stay tuned for that. And thanks for watching. This has been my life with plants, and I'm Newman, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.